I'm glad that we were able to do what we typically can't do at military events and give a round of applause for the national anthem. But if we could do that again, that was. Thank you, Tech Sergeant Thornton, for sharing your gift with us today. That was really special. Chaplain Springs, what a creative way to do that. That was really cool. Thank you for having the humility to not use your own words, but to use the words of Dr. King. I think that was really wisely done. And we never do this for chaplains because we've all either saying the sign of the cross or finishing. But I would like to give you a round of applause since those were not your words, but you shared with us. So thanks, Chief, for being here. Appreciate it. Our Ops Group Deputy Commander, thanks for being here. Smack Birch, Colonel Smith, look forward to seeing you next week during the tour. I think we'll have a really good time, so thanks for meeting us. I think we're going to see you at the pharmacy, so it'll be good. We'll get that going. So thanks so much. And obviously, Colonel, on your Brule, and your beautiful family. Thank you all four of you for being here today. Thanks for gracing us with your time and also eventually with your words. And I won't speak for very long because everyone's here to hear you. They hear me plenty. They're here to hear you. So this will be a really cool event. Okay, so just a few thoughts before the Colonel gets up here. Just a couple things I'd like to share. Things I'm thinking about as we enter this Martin Luther King Day long weekend, this holiday weekend. And I do want to thank everyone that actually came and attended today. We are on the eve of a 4-day weekend, and we are in the afternoon of the eve of a 4-day weekend. So you all could have knocked off. It's cold, so you're not going to be at the beach today, but you all could have knocked off and been at Busch Gardens by now. So thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Your presence shows that you care about this. He's like, I could have gone. He's like, I didn't know that was an option. It's a 4-day weekend. So Dr. King's pursuit of equality reshaped the fabric of America and influenced the U.S. military's commitment to justice and inclusion. His leadership shattered barriers and demanded a society, and I think also a military, where every person's dignity and worth are recognized, their dignity. Dr. King's call for a beloved community, one built on respect, unity, and shared purpose, remains our guiding light. And on that theme of communities, I believe communities are strongest with diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of background, and all those things make us more innovative, more adaptable, and more lethal in defense of our nation, which is our job, right? It's to break things and you know what else, right? That is our job in the United States military. Dr. King's legacy demands more than words. It calls for durable action, not single, episodic, individual action, for durable, consistent action. It requires us to confront injustice and build a culture where all airmen stand shoulder to shoulder as equals, united and unwavering in commitment. That matters. Now, this is the point where we would introduce the speaker. I was told that Mrs. Cook may have a friendship with the good Colonel and would like to do that, but I will take a little bit of commander prerogative, if you don't mind, and just say a couple of things that I've learned about you, just in preparing for today, and just share those with everyone. I don't want to steal your thunder or steal your remarks. But retired Army Colonel, infantryman, both as an officer and as an enlistedman. So a career of service as an infantryman, and probably not where you thought you would have been when you were 16 years old, living in South Central in California. I do want to take that moment to pause and say, acknowledging that that's where you're from, very aware of what's going on right now in California and in the Los Angeles area. I would find it hard to believe you don't still have friends and family in that region and in that area that are probably suffering and probably watching areas that are special to you on the news burn down. And I think that's probably really hard. So thank you for being here with us today. And if there's anything I can do or say to help out with that on the backside, please let me know.
Appreciate it.
And we do have a chaplain here as well, so he's here. But you made the decision thanks to an Army recruiter based on a friend of yours that had gone into the Army a few years before and seemed to be doing okay when he got back from that. To go see an Army recruiter, the Army recruiter saw something really special in you. And initially really wanted to get you into the Army, but then couldn't because there was this necessary thing called a high school diploma. But saw something so strong in you that wanted to take the extra time to get you to that point where you had your equivalency degree, and then you could enlist and become an infantryman. And that wasn't enough for you. I think maybe as you described it, you wanted to see at the table. You want to be a commissioned officer on top of having been a non-commissioned officer. And so you went to OTS and you became a commissioned officer, and then where else would you go? Right back to the infantry, right?
Yes.
Now, there was a little bit of time in there where you were hitting people in the face on the government's dime as an Army boxer. I'll let you tell all those stories. But I think you did a few years of that as well. so everyone just be real nice to him today. And he's got some skills that may be hiding behind that beard right now. But what a career. I'm really excited to hear about all the time and all the experiences that you had up to the point where you joined, and then certainly the time in service and everything that you want to say. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to begin the introduction of you and then turn it back to Mrs. Cook to finish that. So thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Whew, I tell you, thank you. I'm humbled. I am humbled to stand before you right now. I'm just trying to take it in. Tech Sergeant Thornton, thank you for that rendition of the national anthem. You know, outside of this uniform, you know, our nation, they feel what they feel, they think what they think. But for us, this Old Glory, that song, I'm telling you, it means something different to us who wear the uniform. I tell you, I'm already missing it. I've been gone a year, and just in your presence, I'm missing it. But thank you, Master Sergeant Coleman. Thank you for putting this together. Dr. Garcia, thank you for reaching out and having confidence in me to be able to show up. Colonel, thank you for those kind words in your introduction and your empathy for California. Yes, I grew up in Los Angeles, South Central, and the last school that I attended before I dropped out of high school was Pacific Palisades. Oh, wow. And you've all seen that's been kind of like ground zero of these fires, and the school that I attended is burnt to the ground. And there's levels of California. South Central is here, okay? Beverly Hills is here. And then there's Palisades and Malibu. I mean, that's kind of the structure there. Now, how did I get out to Palisades? Being in South Central. Thankful to what Dr. Martin Luther King was doing during that time, fighting for equality, fighting for justice, for all of us to have equal opportunity to the best education. There was the bus program that enabled me to get bused from South Central out to Pacific Palisades. And when I showed up to Pacific Palisades, I saw all the cars, nothing but luxury cars in the parking lot. And I said, wow, these teachers must make a lot of money. And they were like, no, that's not the teacher's parking lot. Those are the students' cars. You look over there, those are the teachers' cars. And you saw the old beat-up bandwagons and hoopties and rust buckets. But that was the dynamic that I was walking into. And my career has been blessed. And that is why I am honored to be here with you this afternoon to take a few moments to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King. There's no other audience that I take pride in, that I receive joy in, than warriors who wear this uniform. Because I know what you do day in, day out, around the clock, from E1 to O10. I know and I get it. I know your language. I know the pains that you're going through. I know the sufferings that you're going through. And although you may not be in Busch Gardens right now, I'm going to ask you to buckle up because I'm about to take you on a roller coaster ride of emotions as we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. First, I would like to thank the commanding officer and the Chief Master Sergeant of the 6th Air Refueling Wing here at MacDill Air Force Base. Colonel Ed Shapanik, name like mine, I had to practice several times. I still probably didn't get it right. And Chief Master Sergeant, you don't have an easy one as well. They sent me the phonetics, it's Ron. So I wouldn't have got that. And then Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Birch, representing the operations group. Thank you for your consideration to host this memorial in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and this national holiday. It speaks volumes to your sensitivity for the need to take a moment to remember the sacrifices that were made to push this American society to accept its former slaves as equals under the law and validate the truth of what the Declaration of Independence declared, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must remember that for centuries, Black people were not considered to be full human beings in this country, let alone citizens, when the founding fathers formed this more perfect union. Domestic tranquility, as spoken of in the preamble of the United States Constitution, were common words that were not common to be associated with the lives of Black people as they endured inhumane treatment at the hands of American citizens. The blessings of liberty, as spoken in the preamble, were not passed down to generation upon generation as promised, but rather the polar opposites in the form of terror, violence, lynchings, dogs, fire hoses, and overt discrimination. Justice in every form, in every fashion, in every shape was systematically denied. As we gather here today to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and this National Day of Service, please allow me to refresh our memory and remind us that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down and assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968, while he was just 39 years old. He did not live to see his 40th birthday. If he was alive today, he would be 96 years old. Dr. King was not assassinated because he was participating in a community service event, or passing out turkeys on Thanksgiving Day, or picking up trash in an underserved neighborhood in the inner city that today's society has so cleverly and conveniently renamed what was once called the ghetto, where the underserved were Black people who were not afforded the rights of citizenship in this country or to live outside of the confines of the ghetto. Dr. King was assassinated because he stood up and fought against the powers of this nation, from the kitchen table all the way to the White House, that denied Black people citizenship, denied us the right to vote, and denied us the dignity to live as free and equal human beings in a country that taunted itself as that city on a hilltop. Dr. King was assassinated because he refused to accept the status quo of societal norms which relegated Black people to second-class citizens. We love to talk about the love that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had for humanity. And he did love all of humanity. And he lived and breathed every ounce of breath that he had to try to extract the very best out of humanity. But at the time, American humanity was not ready to receive his open arms of love and the kindness that he brought forth, nor his dreams of thinking that he could achieve equality for his people and himself. But what we don't like to talk about is the very thing that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed for. Dr. King was murdered because he committed his life to overturning a system of systemic and institutionalized racism and discrimination while using his intellect, not violently, but using his mind intelligently against the nation that was brutishly bullish, terrifyingly tyrannical, viciously violent, and utterly unforgiving in its pursuit to keep the status quo of keeping Black people subjugated under the role of second-class citizen. Dr. King's fight for equality was not limited to just Black people. He was standing up for every human being that breathed life in their bodies, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of religion. All races today, all genders today, all religions today in this country have benefited and continue to benefit off of the back of what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. sacrificed his life for. And in spite of the hatred, in spite of the violence, in spite of the efforts to kill his dream, the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lives on today. You may ask me the question, Kira, why is it important that Dr. King's dream live on? Well, I'm glad that you asked me that question because I have an answer. I have a real world modern day scenario. When the governor of Florida and the state of Florida passes laws and legislations that denies my history, my heritage, and my story of life from the right of being taught in Florida public schools, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to tell my 8-year-old daughter, my 15-year-old son, when they ask of me, Daddy, why can't I learn about my history in public school? What's wrong with my history? In essence, they're asking, what's wrong with me? How do I respond from that type of question? What am I supposed to do as a father, as a man? Normally when I talk, I don't ask the audience to do anything, but I'm going to ask just one time if you would just tolerate me for one moment. I'm going to ask you, if you will, to close your eyes for a moment and just think about a couple of thoughts. I'm going to ask you, if you have children, think about your children. If you have grandchildren, think about your grandchildren. If you don't have children and you're contemplating having children, think about this just for 1 second. And ask yourself, if you were in my position, what would you do if one day a law was passed that negated your entire existence and deemed that your life and your history did not matter in this country and no one should care to know about it? And you have your children with you. Now open your eyes. What would you do? Would you accept it? Would you do something about it? Just a few days ago, I heard on TV the nominee for the Secretary of Defense. Now, what I'm about to say is I'm asking you to be careful because we are apolitical in this uniform. I've served for 38 years on active duty, Republican and Democrat. It did not matter. What mattered was what was to my left and to my right. Was the uniform that I was with. That is what mattered. And it's easy to get caught up in all the rub-a-dub and all the hoopla of politics. We have to make sure that we as soldiers and airmen in this uniform separate that. However, as I was listening to this nominee talk, he spewed out the insinuations that the only reason why women and minorities are in senior positions of leadership and in certain jobs across the Department of Defense is due primarily to the cause of diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that have somehow and mysteriously dropped the standards or lowered the qualifications of requirements just so the armed forces could meet quotas. And having unqualified women and minorities in these positions. And due to these woke DEI policies and CRT indoctrinations, the Army or the armed forces is severely weakened. It is a weak force. Now, I'm just paraphrasing what was said. Now, for me, I took offense. I just retired last January. And I was not aware that we were weak. That we were a weak force, and I definitely did not know that we had quotas. For your knowledge, we don't. We don't have any quotas in our armed forces. Again, how am I to respond as a retired colonel with 38 years of active duty service in the infantry as a warrior? What do I do when my own accomplishments and sacrifices are relegated to, he only got promoted to that rank to meet a quota? Now, as Colonel told you about my background, I mean, I didn't go to bed one night, drink a can of Red Bull, and wake up with wings. I mean, I came from the foxhole. I built trenches. I was on kitchen patrol. I was on guard on the walls, on the frontiers of Germany before the wall came down. I mean, you talk about paying dues. I mean, I've worked. I mean, I shouldn't have to say these things, but even with my promotion to colonel, I was a merit-based promotion. You have regular promotions, then you have merit-based, which is the top of the top. I'm not bragging, but I should not have to say that. But I say that because when I talk to someone and they ask me, what did you do? I said, I'm retired. Oh, were you a sergeant? I'm like, I mean, not even the courtesy of a command master chief or sergeant major. I mean, well, you're sergeant first class. I'm like, no, I was an officer. And then the next response is, you have a college degree? Yes, I have a college degree. Last time I checked, we're authorized to go to college now. So what did you retire? I retired as the colonel. You mean lieutenant colonel? I think I know the rank structure pretty good, and I know the difference between lieutenant colonel and colonel. I said colonel. I meant colonel. But it's just the back and forth of not believing and accepting what they see and thinking that maybe he got it because of, no. I got it because I made my bones in the fire of work and understanding that in this profession, you better be good at your craft because the enemy is waiting for you, waiting for that unprepared, that person who thinks that what we do is simple as filling up the tanks on these tankers that you push out. Some people take that job for granted and think it's not important. I'm out here smelling like J8 diesel fuel. Nobody cares about me. Yes, we do care about you. Because when I'm calling on that ground and I'm asking for targets to be engaged, I know that the planes that delivers those munitions can't get there unless the tanks that you refuel get there. So again, when I hear someone like that, I have to ask myself, what would I do? What should I do? And I'm glad you asked me that question again. What should I do? Because I'll tell you what I would do. And I don't need you to close your eyes or imagine anything. I will do what needs to be done in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and stand up and not be afraid of what it may cost me to teach my children who they are and to stand in the sacrifices that were made toward the freedom of this nation and fight for those who cannot stand and fight for themselves in the name of freedom, justice, and equality. The reason why Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dream must live on is because dreams require constant work and vigilant effort to forge through the difficulties of a dream deferred. Unfortunately, there are people in this society that do not want us to unite and overcome these differences and stereotypes. My voice cannot be the only voice to speak up against this type of tyranny and passive oppression, where my very existence is constantly questioned and scrutinized. It must be the voice of everyone who calls themselves American. If one of us is trampled upon and stripped of our dignity of who we are, then who are the rest of us as Americans if we sit idly by and say nothing? Dr. King told us that he who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps perpetrate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. He goes on to say, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. When we look back in retrospect at what was taking place during the time of Dr. Martin Luther King's life before he was assassinated. Many people today say, ooh, if I was back there, I would have said something. If I was back there, I would have done something. I wouldn't have treated people like that. When you see the actual footage, the actual records, and see it with your eyes, the average person will say, I would not have done that. I would have done something about it. But Dr. King didn't say these words for nothing, because there were many people who chose to say nothing. Now, I bring that today because Dr. King's spirit, his dream is an everlasting dream of what right is, what righteousness is. The example that I gave you about my history in this state of Florida, I can't speak to the rest of the states in this union, but I can speak to where I live right now. And it affects me, it affects my children, it affects my posterity. Now, as a father, as a man, I'm going to do what I've always done. Do what I'm required to do, to teach and train my children. Now, my voice should not be the only voice that sees that there's a problem with that. And I should have someone that does not look like me, standing up for me, defending me, fighting for me, just like we do on that battlefield. On that battlefield, there is no Air Force uniform, no Army uniform, no Navy uniform, no Space Force uniform, no Marine Corps uniform. When we're on that battlefield in that box together and we see someone catching heat, we don't have to think about it. We don't have to say, well, ooh, that's the Air Force. I'm not going to help them. That's their problem. When we see it, we put our focus on it and we engage and we defend. That's what we do as a national force. But when we step out of this uniform, most people drift to their comfort zone and their likeness. Who is like me? That's who I'm going to help. And this is what Dr. King fought against and gave his life for. There will be some who will try to extract a message of hate out of these words that I've shared with you today. But know for a fact that these are words from a passionate heart of love, from a place deep within my soul, where there is a flicker of hope that burns from a flame of optimism, that this nation will continue to move forward and not go backwards, and keep fighting until a type of godly love is made manifest, that we can come together and sit by the fire and share our collective stories of what makes America great. I love America, and I am humbled and crazy proud to have served and sacrificed my entire adult life to defend her freedom on active duty. What you servicemen and women in uniform, especially I'm looking at the youth, I mean, it's just, I know I have a gray beard, but geez Louise, I'm looking at some of your faces. I mean, you look younger than some of my children, my kids. But that's a beautiful thing, because I don't care what the world says. They're always talking about a generation. This generation, generation that. Well, the people that put on this uniform are exempt from that generational ideology, because you all have volunteered to make a choice, to make a difference. You're standing up for people who are not willing to stand up for themselves. You are defending a freedom that people take for granted every single day, because in their minds, they don't think that there's a threat or a problem to our democracy or the liberties that we have. But you, it's pressed upon you by your leaders. Get up, get out, get here. Be here at 6 o'clock. Stay here until it's done. Be back tomorrow, and we just keep doing it over and over and over again, because this is the sacrifice that comes with wearing this uniform. And what we do is, in essence, like Colonel Stepanek stated, what we do in uniform is exactly what Dr. Martin Luther King did as a civilian. He put himself, his personal. He probably would still be living today if he just minded his own business and just looked out for himself and not spoke up for the people who were too afraid to speak up for themselves. But that's how the enemy wins. When we go to our places to punch people in the face and to hit them with everything that we got, and we have a lot, we don't show up tiptoeing. We bring them the business because we know what it takes to win and to be free. We give them no space to consolidate or reorganize or regroup. We deal with it until it's done. Then we report back up. Green light, go. We're good. Thank you. And we move forward. Today we do more than remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We answer his call. We continue his work. We serve with purpose. We stand up for what is right, and we fight for those who are either unwilling or unable to fight for themselves and for the freedom of all Americans. And in doing so, we ensure that his dream lives on, not just in our hearts and minds, but in our actions. There's one particular organization that I commanded. Our motto was deeds, not words. Thank you, MacDill Air Force Base. Thank you, Colonel Saponic, Chief Master Sergeant Howell. Thank you, airmen, airwomen. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for what you do and the sacrifice that you make. You hear it all the time. Thank you for your sacrifices. But it's one thing coming from the lips of somebody who doesn't do this. Coming from my lips, you better believe it's worth its weight in gold, because I know what you go through every single day, and I miss it. I really do miss it. I'm homesick just being amongst you. I really am. Thank you all, and may God bless our armed forces as they stand watch on the four corners of the globe, defending our freedoms, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you.